Yeah, I've tried both the lists that Will and Ketron are talking, or Will and Will and
Holy!
Will and Kika.
Um, on top of that, I feel like it's just hard. It's just harder for that deck to function just because it has more like.
Yo, what is going on, guys? Rudy TCG back at it again with another video. And today I'm joined here with three guests, and we're going to talk about the meta for World Championships. So to start it all off, why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Let's go KICA, Will, and Rahul.
Hello, my name is Peter. I live in New York. That's pretty much it. Busted.
Hey everyone, my name is Will Jenkins. I'm from the Maryland area, sponsored by Tapu Comics, and I know what all the cards do in this set now.
I don't.
Same.
Bro, how dare you? Get off! Oh my god. Free content, you don't know what the cards do? Oh my god.
Hello everyone, I am Rahul. That's it. That's all you get.
Okay. All
We're
right,
in
so
Virginia now, though.
Oh.
Or do I?
Rahul's like unblurring himself randomly.
All right. So the first deck we're going to talk about here is the most hyped deck of the entire rotation is Malamar right now. I mean, not as much hype as initially expected, but what do you guys think of the deck? Which variant do you think is the best currently, and do you think it's a solid play for Worlds? We can go the same order for the whole video.
Honestly, I think the deck is bottom of tier 2, and the only viable version of it is non-GX with spell tags.
I agree with Kika. I don't think it's very good.
I think it's very underwhelming
Yeah, it
as
also
well.
struggles with like bench snipe stuff and things that can consistently gust up your Malamars and go around tag.
Yeah. Yeah, same issue. I think Ultra is pretty okay, but it's like still, I guess, middle to bottom of tier 2 in my opinion. I spent some time testing it and all. Like, I was just like, I don't like this. It's just like not like your turn 1 is pretty good always, and then your turn 2 is like nothing.
I guess I can see that, but Ultra does have the opportunity to one-shot tag teams pretty easily in this new expansion because there's not really a way to gust up Malamars. That is one really key part of the deck, keeping your Malamars alive. So do you think this helps the deck at all, or do you think it keeps it? It's still bottom tier 2.
Sorry, what was the question?
So the lack of gust in the format, keeping your Malamars alive, do you think this helps the deck or hurts the deck?
I mean, I think it's mostly irrelevant because the deck has good options of spreading damage, so I don't think it hurts the deck at all. I think it's Malamar's being safe a lot of the time is probably a good thing, but the problem with Malamar is just setting up consistently every game and having a mid game where you can set up multiple Malamars.
I think there's definitely ways to gust up Malamars right now. Like decks that can play catcher, take a turn off, use Guru. Just like killing the Malamars hurts Malamar so much that I feel like you have time to do that sometimes. And then there's decks running around that play the Nine Tails that you discard 2 fires, gust up something. So you have like Ability Reshizard playing that. You have some Blounds list playing that. There's plenty of gust effects for some decks to kill Malamars. And you have Tag Bolt and stuff. So if the Mew doesn't come down early enough, you could potentially Tag Bolt 2 Pokemon.
Also, on the same topic of Malamar, I just recently took the 5 seconds to read Esper because a lot of people have been saying that Esper is good. Esper is garbage. If you read the card, it actually says it does 20 damage for each counter on this Pokemon and not that Pokemon, so it doesn't do anything. So don't play Esper.
Yeah, Malamar just sucks.
Okay, moving on to the second most hyped up deck in the post rotation format is Pikarom. So do you think Pikarom? What is the best way to build Pikarom currently, and do you think Pikarom is viable in the current meta?
Same rotation.
Yeah, same for the whole video.
Honestly, I didn't know there was multiple ways to build Pikarom. I don't really. I mean, I guess you could play with Jirachis and without, but I mean, it's pretty much all the same. It's definitely one of the more consistent decks in the format, for sure. It just lost the least amount of cards from the rotation. I don't know. It's definitely like It's definitely tier one, and people are like aware of it. So every deck is like kind of built to like at least have a chance.
And how do you feel about one Raichu or two Raichu?
I feel like if you play like a Mewtwo tag team, you don't really need the second Raichu. But I mean, pricing's always a thing, so you can technically play two. It just depends on how you build your deck and how much space you have.
I personally like the Jirachi version better, with like a Zapdos or two. I think Jirachi is just really good. It helps you late game with stamps. You can establish your board better with Jirachi instead of just going like Turbo to Dene. You have extra reach with Jirachi. Um, and yeah, I think Pika's really strong right now. I think Raichu is incredibly strong and powerful. It's really good at knocking out tag teams like Reshi, Mewtwo, opposing Raichus and stuff with the GX attack. That's very easy to get off with a tag switch or two. And I overall just think it's like really good right now.
Yeah, I'm more on the camp of where Joltik is with the more turbo build. I've tried the Raichu. The Raichu version isn't bad per se, but I think it's more of a liability in the mirror. And random one prize decks can kind of like take the weird, prize exchange with the Gust because the Jirachi eventually almost certainly becomes a free prize early, and that kind of offsets the math on a lot of things. Whereas if you just go turbo and have a lot of big boys, you can almost make them play 7, maybe 8 prize game. And one thing Kika didn't mention that I'm going to mention is that the Lily versus non-Lily. A lot of lists are playing Lily, and I'm not a huge fan of the Lily because like like turn one, you're getting maybe 2 or 3 cards, and you're almost dedening the whole hand away anyway. So why not just like dedenne first and then like play like a Cynthia or an Erica's or something just set up, as opposed to like middle to late game. You're like looking at your hand where it's like a 5-6 card hand, and you're lilying for 1 to 2 at most without pitching important resources. So.
All right, all right. So moving on to the next deck is Reshizard. It is probably one of the top talks about archetypes at the moment. KICA has an interesting build of it with the Blounds, Reshi Blounds. So again, what do you think is the best way to build Reshi, and do you think that it has a place in Worlds?
Well, my Reshi Blounds deck is named Reshi Blounds as kind of like a meme, but it's basically just a Blacephalon deck. I feel like it's just better than Reshi Zard in general, like the Greens version, because they're both playing the Greens engine, and it just feels like having the just 2 prize attackers as your main attacker, and just like a lot of options in terms of energy and damage. Like Charizard technically has damage cap, and like in this new set, we saw a bunch of relevant tag teams like Mewtwo and stuff like that just have a lot of HP, which Charizard can't really get there unless you GX. So I personally just like the Reshi Bonds version. It just beats literally the Reshizard just regular version, and it just has better matchups in general. And in my opinion, it's for me, it's been testing like it's the best deck I've played in testing.
Like I really like Kiku's deck as well, but I think more on the topic of just standard Reshizard variants that people are building with just straight Greens Reshizard and Ability Reshizard. I really liked the Greens Reshizard, but it always felt like it struggled to stamp. And outside of that, it was always super solid with all the healing cards you can play. You can play Power Plants and Shrines, and you have a nice combination of stadiums that you can play. Volcanian's always been really, really strong. But I wanted something that didn't lose the stamp as often, because it feels like you can win an entire game and then get stamped and then you just lose, which is kind of annoying. So I switched to the ability version, and it was really strong at first, but then as I tested it more against Darkbox and Pika, it just felt to come up a little short, and it didn't feel nearly as good. So going back to the Greens Reshizard is where I'm at right now. I like Kika's deck a lot, but there's not a lot you can do to get around Stamp and Greens Reshi.
I have not tried Ability Reshi myself, but I've played a lot of Kika's Reshi Blondes and I like it a lot. It's probably one of my top like 3 decks currently, if Worlds is tomorrow. But I did put out an article today on 6 Prizes about Green's Reshi because I think that is my current top pick because of how, like Will was saying, how versatile you can be with the stadium counts, and just you can get what you need out of the deck at the perfect timing. And I think the biggest reason Greens decks, I favor them over non-Greens decks, is because you have the ability to dig out that power plant when you need it on that crucial turn. Because a lot of the time, I think this format is dictated by having power plant to deal with a lot of really annoying and just like troublesome cards. And so I think Greens is the correct route to go either way.
You can also find your custom catchers really easily, which is nice if there's ever something you just want to target down instantly.
Yep.
I think one of the problems with green Reshizard, like the regular Reshizard deck, is that it, like Will was saying, it's very susceptible to stamp to low amount of cards versus the Blound version. It doesn't really have that problem because if you get stamped, you're gonna have the key swing turn of all the beast rings coming like a turn or two earlier, which just gives you like a better board state in terms of the late game. So generally, what I found is that if you get stamped low, it's mostly irrelevant if you had a good mid game. But if you have Persian out, it just is irrelevant at all. Like it doesn't matter if you get stamped.
You can also set up checkmates with burst and stuff depending on how the
Yeah.
game unfolds. So I think Reshi Blounds as a deck is probably the best Reshizard version at the moment.
Even though it's one Reshizard.
All right,
Fringe
moving on. Oh, okay. So moving on to the next archetype is just regular Blounds Naganadel. Do you think this deck is going to get scared off by the new Tapu Fini tech that you can just splash into any deck, basically? Or do you think that card is not going to be played as much and the deck is still going to remain a strong archetype?
So there's several problems with regular Blounds with Nag. One is discarding your energies to use Nag efficiently. The other is just like setting up. It's just not as easy without Nest Ball, Ultra Ball. On top of that, I feel like it's just hard. It's just harder for that deck to function just because it has more cards in it. Like, how do I explain? It has just like random poke. Like you have so many evolution cards and all this other stuff that you don't really need. I feel like it just hinders you in the mid to late game.
Okay.
I don't know how much Will was listening, but
I'm sorry, where were we?
I'll just take the rest of this question.
Alright, cool.
I think Blounds is still a good deck, and I think whether it be Kika's Reshi Blounds or like Blounds Nag, like Kika was saying, it's a little bit of you have a lot of trouble searching out the stuff you need. But Blounds as like a card is really good now because like there's too many turns you need to be able to stamp Blounds for it to do something. And so if they're playing Nag already, there's no reason they shouldn't be playing Persian. And if they can find those Persian pieces along with the Nag pieces, I know it's a lot to ask for, but if they do set up in a perfect world, it's really scary. So I've been finding that out in my testing as well. And so for either Kika's version or regular Nag Blounds, I think Afini is not a card that'll scare it off, but a card that should be played to give some decks a little bit of a better matchup. But that's, I think, more of a day 2 play rather than a day 1 play. Maybe even it's just a day 1 play because you can just get a couple of autos if you hit like Blounds and you find what you need when you need it.
I wanted to add something on that Fini. The problem with Fini is that it's very good versus Blounds, but the current format just has very bad non-GX search. So on top of it being hard to search out, you also can't recycle it because we lost Rescue Stretcher. So it's a one of that just does nothing versus every other matchup except Blounds. So honestly, I wouldn't play it in a deck, but I mean it's a good counter card, obviously.
How much damage exactly does it do if there's an Ultra Beast on the board?
100.
I think it does 100, so it'll do 200 damage.
Okay, so is it even worth having it for like other matchups too, or like Beast Box and stuff, or no?
100's too little.
100's too
If
little.
it was like 120 or 130, then yes. But 100 is just not enough.
And Will, do you have any input on Blounds?
I thought it was really strong at first. It was doing really well against Darkbox, but then when I started to test it against Pika, I felt like it would struggle if I could like full blitz to a Raichu early, knock out 2 prizes, then GX with the Raichu while stamping in the same turn, and then essentially forcing you to gust something else up like a tag team, and KO that. But sometimes it's just hard to set up Ninetales, or if you're playing custom catchers doing that. And if you have a Persian on your board, I would try and kill the Persian with the GX. So it was originally very high on my list, and it's kind of fallen off as I've tested it more. As for Fini, I think Fini can be splashed into a lot of decks. It's not super easy to find, but I feel like if I was playing Darkbox, it might just be the one thing that I need to be able to swing the game. So I haven't tested a ton of Fini, but it seems like 1 is enough to swing the matchup, assuming you can find it and use it to its full effectiveness.
And do you guys think enough Fini is being played as to where you need to think about it as a Blounds player, or do you think no one's playing Fini right now?
Nobody's playing Fini right now.
No one's playing it.
It's the card that I talked about very briefly in my article, just saying like I don't think it's like a warranted play yet, but as we get like closer to the event, we'll get a better grasp of how people actually feel about the meta because people are still trying out their stuff. People are still figuring out what they want to do with the format. So once we get there, like once we get to that like last week of testing, and you get there, maybe you personally hear a group of people that are playing Blounds are like enough people are playing Blounds where you're like, I need to play Fini. It just comes down to like what your testing is for deck day one because a Fini could be good in a deck where you just want to get a free auto in a format like day one or even day two. So
For sure. And the other Ultra Beast deck that we're going to talk about is the new Zoroark Beast Box. So with the new Naganadel, what kind of Ultra Beast would you play with that Naganadel? And do you think the deck is viable, being able to hit 170 to the bench whenever you really want to?
I feel like the problem with that deck is that unlike Zoroark, it doesn't have a reliable flat damage count that it can hit for one energy attachment. Like Zoroark could always ride its beating for like 120 and then get to 150 with a choice band. As opposed to this version, like it relies on just weird attackers, and the nag, like the drawing nag, needs to double attach to even attack. So I'm personally not a big fan of it. There might be a version that's really good, but I haven't put any work into it, to be honest. I tried Xander's build, just a few games, and it just felt weird to me. Like it just felt like it couldn't win enough games.
Yeah, I also started testing with Xander's build, and I just felt like it didn't accomplish what I wanted it to as much as I wanted it to. And then I believe there was also like the Mr. Mime Jirachi Prism engine, and that just didn't really work for me. It's awkward to play. Like you can run through your Ultra Beasts with Ultra Conversion, I think it's called, the trade for 3 really quickly, and then you'd have to like Brox grit them back in to draw more cards. And I honestly just didn't enjoy playing it. So maybe there's a build out there that feels a lot better, but I agree with KICA a lot. It just felt awkward to play, and I felt like it didn't accomplish what I wanted it to. And the 2 energy attachments is super annoying because it's really hard to go like attach turn 1, have them not kill it, then attach again 170, switch into the other Naganadel Stinger, and now if you don't have another energy on your board, you can't do 170 again, so you're forced to use Beast Raid if that doesn't get knocked out, or use something else.
I'm on the same page. I tried Xander's list. It's pretty okay. It's probably the best that the deck can be, but it's still very combo oriented, and you don't have a good way to like unclog your hands right now, which is the biggest issue.
All right, yeah, for sure. And the next of the really talked about decks is Dark Box. So a lot of people have been having very mixed reviews about this deck. A lot of people either say it's like, oh, it's really good, or a lot of people are saying, oh, it's terrible. So which side of the spectrum do you guys remain on? And do you think there's any pieces of the deck that you think are more important to include than others? Because I know there's a lot of different ways to like construct your list.
I actually put out a list today on Twitter that I built for the deck. I feel like the main problem with the deck was that it just didn't set up consistently. So what I did was I just built a really consistent version. Ultimately, what the problem is the deck relies too much on like lots of moving pieces on its bench. Like you have multiple stage ones. The good things about it though, like comparatively to Nagquag from last format, is that its attackers are much better, and like the upside of like high rolling is definitely higher than Nagquag, but it definitely has less consistent search outs than Nagquag. So that's why I built mines the way I did. Like I'm playing 4 Pokemon Fan Club and like a bunch of draw supporters just to like set up.
For Dark Box, the list I've been testing is kind of just like a go, get in there, put everything on the board, turn 1 less than Kika's is, and try and like utilize Darkrai Prism and scoop ups and things. So no Fan Club for Lily, a bunch of draws like Cynthia. And so far in the games that it works, it's really strong. And then there are some games where you just whiff a supporter and you sit there and you're like, well, this sucks. So it feels like glorified Nagquag in a sense, but at the same time, it feels really good. The 150-60 attack on Darkrai is really good. The GX attack on Darkrai is insane, and it's really cool to just use that attack and say, you can't catch her, so kill my active or do nothing. And the Tyranitar Sableye is one of my favorite new cards. I love Greedy Crush. I think it's such a good attack. And sometimes you can get opponents with that GX. So you can like GX Malamar because they require too much search, and it's just so good. I like the deck a lot.
In yesterday's video today's video that I dropped, I got the GX attack of Tyranitar in Game 3 for loss, and I was playing Malamar, so yeah. I can definitely see how that attack is really strong, discarding 15 cards.
Malamar just needs too much to set up, and if you can catch your opponent off guard when they thin too early, you can just Gigafall GX them, and then boop, there goes your deck, and you lose.
Yeah, I've tried both the lists that Will and Will and Will and Will and KICA are talking about. And, like, the lists are both good in their own respect, but like the Go version is a little bit underwhelming to me, just because it feels like the games you don't set up, you just like actually just lose. But KICA's version kind of like gets all the pieces out, and it's a little bit more of one of those decks that capitalizes on your opponents being a little bit slower and not having their pieces, whereas you're getting your pieces very consistently out there every turn. And then another version of the list that I've been testing a little bit is Azul's with the 4 custom catcher, yada yada. But I just don't think custom catcher is good in the deck, because you have to either, like, it's just a dead card a lot of the time, or you're like, if you're playing the go version, you're thinning those guys really quickly. So it's like, why play 4 effectively dead cards? For a maybe potential one-time use, where like your Umbreon Darkrai GX attack is already like good enough to clean out the game.
Do you guys like the Hoopa GX in the deck with the first attack that you can search any 2 cards you want?
No.
I feel like you have to build your deck heavily around that card if you want to play it. Like, you have to play the Retreating Stadium and like get a way to get it active and attacking turn 1.
Yeah.
All right, the next deck we're going to talk about is kind of a fringe deck at the moment, but it is certainly talked about nonetheless. That is Gardevoir. A lot of people are, again, either saying it's really, really good or really, really bad. I personally think it's really, really bad. But do you guys have any input on that hot mess?
Yeah.
Honestly, I played 0 games with it. When the card was announced, it came out in the previous set, right? So
yeah,
when the card was announced for that set, I was thinking about Worlds, and I was like, maybe this is good for Worlds. But then like we got more information and stuff like, so I mean, the appeal of the GX attack, just like essentially getting rid of your opponent's whole hand, was really good. I feel like the problem is you also have Stamp and stuff, so like every deck can kind of do that essentially in a kind of weird way. So for me, it's less appealing since we don't have Ace Roll and Max Potion as well, so it's just kind of in a weird place for me. But again, I haven't played any games with it, so I don't really know.
Yeah, I personally haven't tested it. I've had a lot of friends that played it, and their consensus was it just wasn't that great.
I've played 0 games with it, but I watched a lot of Celio's videos recently, and it feels like a lot of the games he's winning, and like the way he explained it is like that he needs his opponent to either not play a certain card that like just destroys his entire strategy, or like his opponents just make mistakes, where like I think like a good greens list should probably just body it, whether it be Blounds or whether it be Reshi. Like that seems like a really tough matchup still. And then like Pikachu, he was talking about how like he's gonna play Lightning Charms, but if they play more than 1 Lysander Labs, you lose the game anyway. Or like if you did knock out the first Guardian, it's very difficult to get the second Guardian up and running. Without taking a hit or like just getting softened up. So I don't think it's that amazing, and I think it suffers the same problems from Stamp that every other deck does, and it's just a worse greens engine deck.
Yeah, agreed. And the last deck that we're going to talk about today is Shedinja. Kind of the sleeper pick at the moment, but a lot of people do have their eye on it, and previously, not recently, a lot of people were talking about the techs like Farfetch'd and Spiritomb and stuff like that. What do you guys think of this deck? Do you think it's good enough and it's on the DL enough whereas it can have a really good run in Worlds? Or do you think that it's just very easily countered?
I think the deck is very easily countered. There's several 1-card inclusions depending on the archetype you're playing to beat it. On top of that, I just don't think it beats intelligent players in a best of 3 because if they hate you enough, they'll just tie, because I don't think you can finish a game in 50 minutes. If your opponent draw passes and they play like 4 Cynthias, I honestly think it's impossible for you to win. On top of that, like, it just doesn't seem great to me. Like, it lost like a key piece. I don't think people realized how big Gladion rotating was like for that deck, because the deck doesn't like play lots of counts of a lot of stuff. It relies on recycling them with the Ranguru and other stuff. So in my opinion, if you, like, you could just have some bad prizes and just instantly lose, and then you instantly lose the set because you can't win 2 games. Like, the deck is designed to win only 1 game. So if you have a bad start, it just doesn't get there.
I agree.
Yes.
I think there will definitely be players that play it. One of the biggest hits the deck took is the loss of Gladion. As Kika mentioned, your prizes can just be really unfortunate, and then you just straight up lose a game because of it. I don't think that the deck ever beats Pika with double catchers and Guru in a best of 3 50 minutes, if the 50 minutes were to go longer potentially, but I just feel like the deck just doesn't win in 50 minutes enough. I'm sure there'll be people that come up with some crazy concept and bring it to.
He froze.
Yep.
He got lost by the Shedinjas.
Yeah. I'll just take over, I guess. Basically.
Wait, he's back. He's back.
Well, he's back.
I don't know
Continue
why
that
it keeps
thought.
cutting out. Essentially, it's not a deck that I enjoy playing, so
Okay.
I would play it.
I think that it sucks, and yeah, that's about it. That's where I stand on it. It's just like a bad deck, and like you losing Nest Ball hurt it a lot more than you can imagine, I think, and you have to play like really like shitty supporters, and that just kind of makes the deck worse. And yeah,
All right, and into the last couple bunch of questions is what do you think is the best tech card for the event?
Best tech card, by far is Reset Stamp.
Well, that's not really a tech card. Everyone's gonna play
No,
that.
I think it is.
I think it's a tech card. I mean, I don't know.
I think it's a tech card too.
It's not.
I mean,
like
all
a
right, if
card
he
that every
uses
deck
it,
has
you
to play.
guys can't use it.
All right, I'll pick another one. Let's see. Power Plant's broken.
Damn it, dude.
I like Lysander Labs. That's a good one.
Yeah, I like resource management. I think that that card is just good in general. It allows you, if you have ever had an off turn, you can just throw stuff back into your deck. It's really good in Pika. So yeah, Guru.
That's not a tech card, I guess technically.
Just say Karen, bro.
Yeah, Carrot Caps. I think Mewtwo as a Mew 3 GX is a tech as opposed to an actual attacker. Like the Mew 3 deck itself is like not great. But like if you play Mew 3 and like decks, like it can fit into Pikarom, it can fit into like Ability Reshi, it can fit into like all these random decks, and you can play like random like stage 1, stage 2 GXs that may be good. And it just gives you a little bit of a splash ability and lets you play a little bit less thicker Pokemon lines because of the pricing. And more so you can kind of just, flex with cards.
All right, yeah. So the next question is, what do you think is the best rogue deck in the format right now?
The best rogue deck. What do we consider like everything is a rogue deck because it's like
New format.
it's an unknown format, honestly.
I mean, there's stuff that's like the BEM deck or the stuff like that.
Extraterrestrial spice.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't think we don't like, that's a weird question because like we don't know anything about the format in terms of what's going to be played and what is being played, just because we haven't had any events on top of the set not being released yet.
I mean, Rowlet Eggs is pretty good.
No. No.
Oh, and Will's gone.
Yeah, I don't know what he likes. He's just gone.
What are you evolving with Rowlet Eggs?
Leaveney and Serena. I put a video up 2 days ago.
What do both of those cards do?
Leaveney reduces 40 damage to egg, and Serena's like a grass Malamar to the active.
Okay.
I cut out again. I don't know if anyone heard it.
Yeah. Your cards are weak to fire, right?
Yeah, but you can play Sceptile, and Blounds do nothing.
Yeah, but you got Reshizard,
But
bro.
I got Reshi and Persian.
I mean, okay.
Broken busted.
I like
Alright.
Persian Shedinja, which is essentially Vespiquen.
Persian Shedinja?
Yeah, you just Shedinja your Persian, and now it's a 1-prizer, and you do Vengeance.
With only 4 energies, you can only attack 4 times. Do you play Welder?
Yeah, Welder. You could play Malamar if you want, which doesn't sound amazing, but you can do it. There's things that you can play. You can also set it up to be like the Beast Box deck where you use Persian, or I guess Zork. So you'd like hit, Stinger, hit again, win the game. For Rogue, I guess, if that's what we
That's
want to
pretty
call
gas.
it.
Oh, I have a rogue deck actually. I have a rogue deck.
Okay,
Reshi
yeah.
Blondes. Reshi Blondes.
Chandelure from the new set.
What does it do?
It does 10 plus 60 damage for each. Oh, so you do 10, and then you discard the top 5 of your deck, and it does 60 damage for each Pokemon you discarded. And if you discarded any fire Pokemon, they go directly to your bench. Broken.
Broken, filthy, busted. Alright.
I wrote an article about Behemoth, so I feel like it would be wrong for me not to say Behemoth today. I don't like the Mareep version that has been floating around Twitter because there's an instant 25% chance you get fucked. And there's and then like there's the 75% of the chance that doesn't happen. Like people are playing like Dawn Wings and stuff to get around like paralysis that Choo Choo already does, so it's like an inevitable like you're getting bodied. So the list I put out today is like a fossil based one with Aerodactyl, which I think could also like suit up as a secondary attacker. And like I talk a little bit like why it's not like amazing and why it's not like tier 1 by any means, because there's a couple decks it can't keep up with, but it has like a pretty good Pikarom matchup, and it should probably have a pretty good Dark Box matchup. So like, and like Malamar should be pretty good too. So it's like you deal with some of these decks, but you can't deal with like the greens variants of some decks and stuff like that. So it's like Behemoth is good, but it's not great because it's again setup reliant, and like if you ever miss the lock, you just lose.
All right, for sure. And the next question is, what are your top 3 choices at the moment going into the event?
My top 3 choices. Number 1 is definitely Reshi Blondes. It's definitely the best deck I've tested so far. Number 2, Pika. And number 3, Chandelure.
I'd have to say Pika for sure is number 1 by a landslide, and then probably Dark Box, and Persian Shedinja, and then I haven't tested enough of it. I've only played against it, but I think Kika's Reshi Blondes deck is really good, so that's probably another one I'd play. I haven't played to test it enough.
My number 1 is Greens Reshi. And my number 2 is Greens Reshi Blondes. My number 3 is Pika. All decks that do big aggressive damage.
Greens Pika?
Greens Pika, yeah, you heard me.
You have 4 stamp, 4 judge, free body.
4 judge whistle, bro. That's 8 judge.
It's like turn 1 Letless.
Yeah,
4 Dedenne. 4 judge, 4 Dedenne. Easy.
You just need the greens for that, stamp, turn 1. Every time. Yeah.
Okay. Now for the last question of the video, what do you think is the worst deck floating around right now?
Malamar.
Malamar.
I hate it. It's so bad.
I think that's the best deck right now. I don't know what you guys
There's
are
people
talking
that
about.
just love the deck, and
That's me. I think it's the best deck right now.
They just are like, Malamar is so busted.
I think
it's so busted.
I've literally never liked Malamar. Like even last season, every time Malamar was an option, I was just like, no. Malamar's a trap. I took it to a League Cup, and Katron was just like, you're gonna do bad. I'm like, I know, Malamar's a trap. When my friend literally won the cup yesterday with it, and guess what? 3-2. Not good. And no, I didn't lose a win in it. I just went 0-2 to 3-2. So, it's a trap.
I think deck's busted.
And someone's going to be in the comments like, oh my god, here he goes again calling Malamar bad. Nah,
I will add one thing, though. If we had Nest Ball or like Level Ball in the format, Malamar would be the best deck in format by a landslide.
Correct.
All right, so you guys can get right into your shout-outs and we can get out of here. So, yeah, why don't you take it away, Kika?
Shout out to Bob Zhang. Follow me on Twitter at Peter Joltik, and Subscribe to Six Prizes so you can read my articles.
All right. Hopefully I don't glitch out. Thank you, Rudy, for having me on. Shout out to my sponsor, Team Top Cut Comics. Use TCC Team 10 for 10% off your checkout order. And yeah, see you all at Worlds.
Dude, you forgot to shout out Bob Zhang.
Yeah, dude.
Shout out Bob Zhang, the
There
OG
you go.
Trev god.
Yeah,
Malamar in Trev.
Since we're all doing it,
And shout out Brett Burns. Shout out Brett Burns.
since we're all here doing it, shout out Bob
Brett
Zeg. Shout out to Team RG. They're pretty dope. Play Argent Saga. I haven't played it since I've played a little bit initially, but I'm waiting for the new set stuff to come out. It seems fun. It's good. Shout out TC Evolutions. Sick dice. Get a pair before Worlds. You guys have like a little under 2 weeks, or a little over 2 weeks. Sorry, my bad. Don't want to freak anybody out. To get your stuff. Subscribe to Six Prize so you can read my article first and then read Joltik's article because mine comes out the day before his, I'm pretty sure. So,
Damn it.
so I'm just gonna write about his deck instead and see what happens. And that's about it. Thank you.
And shout out to Alolan Executor Rowlet Tag Team.
Thanks, busted. All right, and on that note, I'd like to thank my sponsor, Things and Stuff. And on that note, we will get out of here. So thank you guys for watching. All right.